So it's Mr. Height back again. This is Honors English 9, Perkiomen Valley High School. This is week 3, something like that. It's already been a number of days. So what have we done since last Wednesday? Well, here we go. So on Thursday of last week, students had their first writing piece due. It was called Who Am I as a Reader, Who Am I as a Writer? An attempt to give us some insight into who they are. Talked a little bit about that last week, but what they did on Thursday was some process writing on that piece. And then they turned those in at the end of the period. Friday brought us into a really unique experience for ninth graders, I hope. And for that, Friday will always be a Touchstones Day for us. So this is the Touchstones Discussion Project. Touchstones Discussion Project is a way to bring in the skills of civil discussion into the classroom, and students learn how to run those discussions themselves. I've been using Touchstones for almost 20 years in the classroom, and I'm actually a board member for the discussion project itself. So I have a really deep and abiding history with this program. There's nothing I've ever done in my classroom that I've done straight out of the box except for Touchstones. I trust the process, and it takes a long time. It takes a really long time for students to come to learn how to run discussions themselves. But this is a program that I've had a lot of success with. So I'm really interested in seeing how this year's ninth graders group of honor students moves into this project. There are large classes, 26 and 24 students in each of those classes. So I'm really interested in seeing what they bring to the table through the year in this project. On Monday, we had our independent reading days, and then that gives me a chance to conference with students. I've met with almost all the students in both ninth grade classes, getting a sense for how many books they've read, getting a sense for what books they might have on their plate coming up, and where they are in terms of reading over the past 2 weeks, really. The only homework I'm asking for is a half an hour every day of reading, and hopefully that's being done in solid chunks of half an hour, but I understand how hectic our lives are. The next thing that we did was on Mondays and Tuesdays, we always start things off with a poem. So poetry is a chance to use what I like to call poems these bite-sized nuggets of thought. And it gives us a chance to really focus on a focused piece of writing and in a very short period of time learn some of the moves that really good writers make. Poetry is great for focusing on the use of concrete detail and also for the look at how we can tell stories in a very short period of time. So speaking of storytelling, on Monday, the poem that they read was called Did I Miss Anything? Which is a great poem. I like to think it's written from a teacher's perspective in response to the titular query, did I miss anything? This is the teacher's response. Links are down below. The poem is by Tom Wayman. And on Tuesday, the poem we did there was a poem by spoken word poet Taylor Mali. The poem is called Like Lilly, Like Wilson. And it's about a girl who is the like addict of his classroom and how she changed her mind about things. It also gave us a chance to try out our own hand with slam poetry. For that, we used this, a Mad Lib Slam poem that Taylor Mali himself created. Students respond to questions here in this column. They open it up, fill in a couple of adjectives, and then they have their own slam poem. And there's some really great poems that we listened to, but the great thing about this is, again, it gave us a chance to focus on something that really good writers do, and all good writers speak in concrete details when they're talking about abstract things. So all the things that they had to fill in here were all concrete details from their own lives. So this was a great chance. Some of the classes read them outside to each other, and they got a chance to hear those things. And so that took us into Tuesday, yesterday. And yesterday in ninth grade, we started what I'm going to call like a writing training camp. And this training camp involved them in moving through a packet that is literally going to take them inside the mind of a writer. And all my students, when they walk through the classroom, I believe that they are writers. I know that they are writers. They've made it this far in school. They have a decent facility with language. But I want to push them further. And in order to get them there, I have to get them into the mindset of a writer. I have to get them to think in writerly ways. This packet is going to get them to do that. There are several different packets. We're going to work through 2 parts of the packet in the next week or so during our studio days, our writing days, and then the other parts of the packet we'll pick up later in the year. But these are self-directed, and also peer feedback is going to be used in this because there's a lot of students. I want to give feedback as quickly as possible. And the only way I can do that is to get them to give feedback to each other and get them listening to their writing. One of the key things about developing a writerly sense for the world is you have to hear language. We don't do enough reading out loud of student writing. I don't think we do enough reading out loud at the high school level of writing done by great authors, but our own writing, that we, it's even less. So we really need to do that, and that's something we're going to be doing. Finally, one improv activity that we had last week. We did this on Friday, or Thursday of last week. Sorry, on Thursday of last week, we did something in class called color words. It's an improv activity. Remember, we're using improv activities in class because improv theater is all about accepting whatever comes to you. And if we're going to do school a little bit differently here and get into deeper learning, things are going to be different. I'm going to be asking them to do things differently. So to build a culture that accepts that rather than rejects that means that we have to build a community of people who are willing to say yes and so for color words, every student got a word. And it's a really simple activity, but when you hear it done and like 23 people or 24 people doing it, it's really clever. So every student gets a word, and the key is they have to say the word so that they're defining it. So for instance, this word, I might say it as silky. I know, it sounds weird, but it's a color word. And this word, I might say, whoops, here we go. I might say this as wavy. The purpose here is to use our voice and to hear how we say things and how the way we say things actually communicates so much more than just the things that we're saying. That's it for the week. See you next time. Links are down below to things like touchstones and all the other things I've talked about.